Hello and welcome to Archaeologists Anonymous. I'm your host, Silvia, and today we're talking about the question, is Indiana Jones an inspirational hero, or is he a dangerous misrepresentation of archaeology? Indiana Jones, adventurer, action hero, and archaeology professor.
In the area, give us a...
When he's not teaching his students, you can find him navigating booby traps and battling Nazis over mythological objects. You know, everyone loves the Indiana Jones movies, and when you think of an archaeologist, you picture Indiana Jones and you hear the iconic theme song. However, is the picture of archaeology that those films present accurate? Have these fun family films misled the public? And are they dangerous to the field of archaeology? Firstly, let's explore the side of the argument that is anti-Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones commits several major archaeological crimes. The famous first scene, in which Indiana Jones seizes an idol out of a temple, is a perfect example. Indiana Jones triggers all of the booby traps in that temple, including the one that leads to the destruction of the entire temple. He is only interested in that golden idol, not the temple itself. This blasphemous behavior is more like what a grave robber would do, not a scholar. Were an archaeologist to excavate this temple, they would carefully excavate it layer by layer, shoring it up so that it wouldn't fall apart like it did in the movie. And a real archaeologist would care about a lot more than just the idol in the temple. The material culture of the temple itself, its layout, its intricate technology. This would require months of excavation, diagrams, photography, lab work. Indiana Jones flees the temple in 10 minutes and leaves it in ruins. He only leaves that giant boulder intact. Not to mention that Indiana Jones is on rather hostile terms with the local population. And a real archaeologist would have built up a stable and trusting relationship with the locals. There are a number of other crimes against archaeology Jones commits, like breaking off the arm of a corpse to make a torch, smashing through catacomb walls, and he generally doesn't even take notes. The movies also feature mythological artifacts with actual magical powers. Hardly realistic. It is this sort of connection between ancient artifacts and magic that encourages the ancient aliens line of thinking. In fact, Indiana Jones 4 literally has aliens in it. So, these movies give people the complete wrong impression of what it's like to study the past. We on the anti-Jones side believe that Indiana Jones' cavalier attitude towards locals, authority, and even the sites and artifacts themselves is a bad example for the public. Good archaeology requires years of careful research, excavation, and analysis after the fact. And so, archaeologists on our side bristle when Indiana Jones comes up. He is not a real archaeologist.
I'm allowing you to tag along, so why don't you give your mouth a rest?
Some interesting points by the anti-Jonesers. Let's hear from the people who are more pro-Indiana Jones. We Indiana Jones apologists argue that we should look to what he says, not necessarily what he does all the time. For example, his famous catchphrase, "That belongs in a museum," rings true for a lot of archaeologists. One of the major struggles of archaeology is when private collectors buy up artifacts and they never get to see the light of day and be studied. Artifacts belong in a museum, not hidden away in some private mansion inaccessible to researchers and the public who might benefit from them. He also tells his class that
70% of all archaeology is done in the library.
And this also rings true for archaeology professors. Most of their research time is actually spent reading, writing, or processing finds after the dig, and digs mainly take place during the summer when there isn't a class going on. We pro-Jonesers argue that what Dr. Jones says in these classroom scenes is accurate, and that there is more responsible archaeology theory in these movies than they give credit for. Plus, these are adventure movies, and the whole point is to be fun. The audience knows that. You know, a frequent joke around Indiana Jones is that these are archaeology documentaries, and that joke shows you that people are aware that it's not 100% accurate. And if the movie showed every single stage of research and, archaeological excavation, it wouldn't be that fun to watch. So the audience might not gain an exact and accurate knowledge of archaeological techniques, but if their main takeaway is archaeology is fun and exciting, which it is, then that's a win. Personally, I lean more to the pro-Indiana Jones camp. To be entirely candid, I grew up watching the Indiana Jones movies myself, and they're one of the reasons that I went into the field of archaeology. Academic fields like archaeology are incredibly important. They can also be really intimidating. There's the whole ivory tower of academia problem. So given that, to have a pop culture icon represent archaeology is certainly not a bad thing. Though a future archaeologist might get some misrepresentations about how archaeology works from the movies, years of studying archaeology will fix this and mitigate some of the issues with misrepresenting the field. And it's important to have something cool and fun that ignites that initial passion for the field. In a way, Indiana Jones is like the gateway drug of archaeology. And one final thing which has to do with funding. How many digs were sponsored by money from donors who grew up loving Indiana Jones? You need the public and donors interested in archaeology, and a cool guy like Indiana Jones certainly helps with that. So, though the movies are ultimately pretty inaccurate, they are fun adventure movies and ultimately do more good than harm for archaeology. I have a feeling that Indiana Jones will inspire future archaeologists for generations to come. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Sean Silvia of Archaeologists Anonymous. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?